Today on Sports Central, we'll be going over our next final prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over quite possibly the biggest surprise team in all of the 2019 season, and that was the North Carolina Tar Heels. And this is a team that was 7-6 last season. Ended up having a great season in comparison to how they've been in the past, but whether or not North Carolina is a dark horse and why I think this could be a big successful team in 2020 is what we're going over here today. We're also going to be going over your returning production along with a full prediction and preview on every game on the Tar Heels schedule going into the 2020 season. So with that, let's look at your season trends from 2019 for this team. Once again, they were 7-6 overall. They were 4-4 between September and October, and then 3-2 between November and the postseason. So yeah, this is a team overall had a great season once again. I mean, they started off a little bit slow, but they did get a couple of big wins against South Carolina and Miami, 24-20. They beat off South Carolina, and then they also beat off Miami 28-25. They had a couple of losses, though, in through that October. That's really was very detrimental to this team's chances of having a bigger season than they did. But they did manage to beat off NC State 41-10 on the road, and they also had a major bowl win over Temple 55-13. Temple didn't even have a chance in that bowl game against North Carolina. And, once again, this is a team that was very successful in comparison to how many thought they would be. Obviously, Mack Brown coming into that program, no one expected him to be able to turn around that North Carolina team as quickly as he did. And I expect that to continue going into 2020. I think Mack Brown is a great coach. There's no doubt on that. When he came out of retirement and he announced that he'd be going to North Carolina, I already thought that North Carolina would be an improved team in 2019, but I definitely did not expect them to make it to a bowl game. I expected North Carolina to possibly be a 4 or 5 win team. I thought it'd be a huge rebuilding process, but Mack Brown has definitely expedited that, and he's definitely done a great job with that team as far as we've seen so far. But once again, 2020 is going to be a crucial season for him for sure. But honestly, I think he's doing a great job, and I definitely think North Carolina is bound for a lot of success in the coming years with Mack Brown. As far as the returning production looks, it looks absolutely great. They've got one of the best returning productions in the nation. They do return their starting quarterback, Sam Howell, who was a big-time quarterback last season, had some really good stats. And you also got to consider he was a true freshman, too. He had hardly any of experience in college, especially going into that 2019 season. And, he put up some really good stats considering how young of a quarterback he is. I think he's a big-time dark horse contender or a big dark horse quarterback in the ACC next season. I definitely think he could be a top 3 quarterback in that ACC conference next season. There's no doubt on that for me. I think Sam Howell definitely is a quarterback to watch out for. And I think for this North Carolina team, he's going to be a big standout player for this North Carolina team as we head into the next few seasons. As far as the running back core looks, you return your top running back in Michael Carter. You also return your second running back in Javonte Williams. And so this running back core is also looking very good heading into next season. Can't forget about that. But as far as the receiving core looks, it looks great, especially for Sam Howell. It's going to be huge for him to be able to return his receiving core, as they do return their top receiver in Diami Brown. They also return their second receiver in Daz Newsome. And then lastly, they return their third receiver as well in Bo Corrales. So in the end, this North Carolina team, especially on offense, is looking very good. Especially as far as the skill players go. With Sam Howell at quarterback and a great running back and receiving core, I think North Carolina could easily have probably the second best offense in the ACC next season. I definitely think that's within reach for this North Carolina team going into next season. As far as the offensive line looks, though, I am a little bit concerned about that offensive line. They lose 3 on there, but in the end, that's really all they lose on this offense. And as far as the defense goes, you lose 5 starters. You lose 2 on the defensive line, 2 linebackers, and 1 in the secondary. So in the end, this defense is losing 5, but that's just above average, I would say, for most teams. Usually you'll see 3 to 4 losses off of most defenses. For North Carolina, they are losing 5. But in the end, this team is still looking very good going into next season. It brings up the question, will North Carolina win their division? Obviously, it's going to be tough. They got a lot of tough teams in there. But in the end, North Carolina, I think, definitely is going to be a big contender in the ACC. And I think North Carolina in general, this is a team that many people are sleeping on. Obviously, there's a few people that know of Sam Howell, but there aren't a lot of people that really know how good Sam Howell is. And, if he is able to improve on the season that he did in 2019, he could easily be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. He was a very accurate quarterback, no doubt on that. So, yeah, watch out for him in this offense, especially going into the 2020 season. Is North Carolina an ACC dark horse? I would say absolutely. I think North Carolina next season, as you've heard me say a couple of times before already, I think this is a team that easily is one of the most underestimated teams in the country going into next season. I mean, especially if we do have a college football season, I think North Carolina will easily be one of the best teams in the ACC. I mean, once again, I do know that they had 7 wins last season and that they do have Mack Brown as coach, but in the end, this North Carolina team is looking very good. Their offense is looking great, even though they're losing a couple on that offensive line. But once again, with Sam Howell at the helm, and you also got several great receivers and running backs in there, I think this team is looking very good, especially on the offensive side, to have a great season going into next season. So watch out for that for sure. But as far as your schedule looks, of course, you start off the season against UCF on the road, and that's going to be a tough game to start off the season, having a road trip to Southern Florida or to Central Florida. But in the end, I mean, I definitely think North Carolina's chances of winning that one are good. But you just can't forget, I mean, it's going to be a road game to start off the season, which always can be tough for some teams. So, but yeah, that's going to be a very important game right off the bat. And you also have another really tough game against Auburn. That's going to be in a neutral location. But yeah, watch out for that Auburn team. They're going to be really good next season. I easily think that Auburn-North Carolina game, if it isn't canceled, could easily be one of the best games in all of the college football season going into 2020. I mean, that's going to be a great game. That's going to be a heck of a game there in between Auburn and North Carolina. However, you did have your September 19th game against James Madison. That is canceled now, so you will not be playing James Madison next season, which if they do continue the bowl threshold of 6 wins, that could be kind of detrimental to North Carolina. But I still think this team's chances of making a bowl game, even though they're losing one game, are still pretty high. I mean, James Madison would have been an automatic win, I would say. But in the end, I mean, this team is still, I think, good enough to be able to get up to 6 wins for sure. But yeah, as far as the Georgia Tech game goes, that's going to be your game to finish off your September. And then you've got Virginia on the road on October 3rd, followed by a game against Virginia Tech on the 10th. So, I mean, obviously, the good thing is about North Carolina is that they don't have to play Clemson next season. So, obviously, and that's going to be a huge help to this North Carolina team as we head towards the 2020 season, is the fact that, I mean, their division is wide open. We've seen, I think, every team in that division make it to an ACC championship at some point within the last decade. I mean, it's been alternating between every team, I believe. I think North Carolina, they could easily be the next team to make it into that ACC championship game and win that division. I think that this team has got a very high chance to do so with the offense that they have once again. But it just all depends on how they do against Virginia and Virginia Tech especially. Those 2 games at the beginning of October are going to be extremely important to North Carolina's chances of making it to the ACC championship game next season. They do have Duke then. They've got Duke and Miami then on back-to-back road games between October 17th and the 24th. You've got a bye week on Halloween, and then you got UConn on November 7th to kick off your November. Then you got Pittsburgh, Boston College, and NC State to follow that. So in the end, I would say your most important month for sure would have to be October. You've got 4 very tough games in there, and I think that those 4 games especially are going to be extremely important for North Carolina to have an important season. So watch out for that October. That's going to be a very important month for this Tar Heel team. As far as your September goes, though, I do think you get a win against UCF, but I think it's going to be very close. I think UCF hangs around in that game quite close, but I think that North Carolina in the end does get the win. So they're going to start off 1-0. However, you will take a loss in your second game of the season against Auburn. And I think that game's going to be close. I definitely think Auburn next season is going to really need to watch out for this North Carolina team. But in the end, Auburn is in a better conference. That's what kind of gives them the upper hand in the end. And Auburn and Bo Nix, I think they're going to get the win there over North Carolina on September 12th. However, I think North Carolina bounces back after a bye week since they're not playing James Madison, and they will get a win against Georgia Tech. So in the end, you go out your September with a 2-1 record, which really is not all that terrible. But as far as your October looks, your very important month, I think you go 4-0. And that's going to be very, very important for North Carolina, especially as we look forward to the 2020 season. Once again, I said it before, their October is going to be very crucial in depending how good of a season this North Carolina team is going to have. And I think they get a big win over Virginia. I also think they get a big win over Virginia Tech. So they're going to win your 2 most important games of the season there between the 2 Virginia teams. And then I think you go into that Duke game. I think they're going to have a lot of momentum going into that game. I think they get an easy win against Duke, and they also get an easy win against Miami. And so you're going to have a 5-game winning streak going into that UConn game on November 7th. You also have a 6-1 record heading into your November as well. And let me remind you, I mean, this team is going to be undefeated in the conference going into November as well, which is going to be a huge achievement for this team. And I think in the end that you do end up beating off UConn pretty easily, but you will slip up in one game in your November, and it's going to kind of confuse you at first. But I do think that they do take a loss against Pittsburgh, and I went back and forth on that several times. But I think it's kind of a trap game. I think North Carolina next season, they're going to be rolling into that Pittsburgh game, but I think in the end, after a couple of tough road games against Duke and Miami, I think you got 2 road trips there, and then you've got UConn, of course. I just think it sets up for them to lose that game, and I think Pittsburgh does end up getting the win there in the end. And I think Pittsburgh, that's going to be their signature win of the season for sure. But I do think North Carolina bounces back. They did a couple of big wins to finish off the season against Boston College and NC State. You're going to finish off the season with a 9-2 record, and you're also going to be 8-1 in the conference next season. And obviously, if you were still playing James Madison, that'd probably be a win. So this team, in a normal 12-game schedule, would have been 12-2 next season, I really would believe. This North Carolina team, I think they're worth being a 10-win team in the ACC next season. And I definitely like their chances, especially with an 8-1 conference record. I really do like their chances of making it to the ACC championship game next season. And I think also beating off Virginia and Virginia Tech will be very important for them next season, and I expect them to get their wins over those 2 teams. So in the end, for North Carolina, once again though, your record prediction will be 9-2, and your conference record prediction is going to be 8-1. But I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below on North Carolina. If you disagree with anything here, I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I will see you all later.